Hello, this is Margarita Monet from Edge of Paradise, and you are listening to the Metal Pit Podcast.
Welcome to the Metal Pit Podcast, where we delve deep into the albums and bands that shaped metal. Please visit us on our website, themetalpit.org, and you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at The Metal Pit. And you can check out our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com at The Metal Pit 666 for some video interviews and video shorts. And we just had our first album video review, so check that out if you haven't already. I am your host, Blake, and I kind of run this website, The Metal Pit, and I have with me two of my writers today. I have Tom. How are you doing today, Tom?
Very well, Blake. How about yourself?
Good. And I have Jimmy from the East Coast of Canada. How are you doing, Jimmy?
Oh man, awesome. Glad to be here. This is great. This is great.
And do you have anything to add about today?
Yes. Well, I mean, me and Tom want to wish you a happy birthday, Tom?
Yeah. Happy birthday, Blake. All right.
Thank you.
And, with a happy birthday comes a rendition of Jimmy's song. So happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Blake. Happy birthday to you.
Oh, now I'm blushing. Luckily, we're not recording the video.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jam. That was amazing. You're an amazing singer. You should start a band.
That I am.
You might have to get a little deeper in your vocals.
Regular Pavarotti over there.
Okay. Yeah. So my birthday's Saturday, just so people know it's not today that this is being released, but yeah, it's coming up at the end of the month. Okay, so this is our last episode of September, and then we will get into the month of October, and we will have all Halloween horror themed episodes. We have episodes discussing albums by the group Bathory, FKU, Deicide, and we're finishing off the Halloween episodes with an album by Helloween. As I thought that's a fitting way to end Halloween with Helloween. Yeah. And then on Halloween night, we mark the 3rd year anniversary of this version of the Metal Pit website. And on that one, we will be revealing the Metal Pit writers' top 50 metal albums of all time, as all of our writers have submitted to me their top 50 lists. And I am going to do my scientific calculations to figure out what is our top 50 albums by everybody.
Nice.
So we got that to look forward to. Now, tonight, we're going to talk about one of the old bands, Black Sabbath. And we're going to talk about their first album with Ronnie James Dio on vocals, and that is, of course, Heaven and Hell. And this came out in 1980. I don't remember the date, but Tom must know the date.
I do. As a matter of fact, it was April 25th, 1980, which was a Thursday, I believe. The reason being, for me personally, it was my birthday. And no, it was released on Friday. It was Friday, the release. And my birthday. And I heard it. I didn't buy my copy of the album till the next day, Saturday. But I heard it that night at a friend's house. He went to the record shop after school to buy it. So yeah, it's on my birthday, April 25th, 1980. So file that highly important date away, everybody.
Awesome.
Well, I'm sure if we get Jim on an episode next April, sure he'll sing.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, it is my birthday. Cool. Kind of like that.
Okay. And well, you can just continue. Is obviously you knew Black Sabbath before this album. So when would you maybe first hear Black Sabbath?
Oh, I think the first album I heard was Paranoid. I heard that somewhere in the middle 70s, I think, Sabbath, at a friend's house. He had an older brother that had all these really cool hard rock and metal albums. So I was aware of Sabbath. I listened to Sabbath already coming into 1980. Not a great deal, but a little bit. So I didn't know what in the world to expect. I was familiar with Ronnie from Rainbow, in
Mhm.
particular Rainbow Rising, because that was an album that I had. I just didn't know how this was going to all work, because we heard that he got hired, but remember, you're not talking about, this is pre-internet days, and no YouTubes or anything like that to rifle through. So it just kind of came out, the album itself, and then it was just a completely different band, just completely. I mean, it was Ozzy's band. He was the most noteworthy member of Sabbath. And then Ronnie just added this dynamic that he could actually sing, and sing quite well. So it was a totally different band. And so it was a really weird transitional period between the later 70s, because they were kind of like they were in a bad way, Sabbath, with the drug issues and, just a lot of turmoil going on. And then Oz, actually got fired. So it was very interesting. Didn't know what to expect, but turned out to be something really, really great.
And it's funny, I read that Sharon Osbourne recommended Dio for the position.
Well, I
But of
think,
course, at the time, she wasn't Sharon Osbourne. They weren't married
right.
then.
So
So
I think that Wendy Dio and Sharon Arden at the time knew each other. And I think after Ronnie was out of Rainbow, they introduced them.
mhm.
Ronnie got to know, not to know, but was introduced to the Sabbath guys at some party or something like that. And then so that might be the connection there. I think that was in Ronnie's book, actually.
Hmm.
And then Ronnie met Tony Iommi at the Rainbow Bar and Grill just by happenstance. That was just by chance meeting, and they're talking because they had previously met. But that's where this whole thing really started. So there was a link from Sharon to Wendy to Ronnie, but I don't think she recommended him. So I
I thought
remember
I,
reading,
I
because
thought I read that, but
it's in Ronnie's book, that whole, how that went down. Actually, I just can't remember precisely what it was.
and Jim, what about you? Now we might have. Oh no, you weren't on the episode. Yeah. So Jim, when did you first hear Black Sabbath or Heaven and Hell or whatever?
Yeah, it's kind of the same story as Tom. My first album would have been Paranoid. Bought it from an older brother who was liquidating all his cassettes in the early '80s. I bought that. I remember going to, like, sneaking off school, heading to the house just down by the school with a buddy of mine, and I bought that like $2 or $3, and I bought 74 Jailbreak, the ACDC
Yeah,
EP. So I got those two on cassette, and
yeah.
and it blew my mind. That would have been like '82 or '83. But when I knew Ronnie James Dio obviously from Rainbow, but I also knew Holy Diver was coming out at that time, and all the Dio albums that were getting big. But I kind of went backwards, picked up Heaven and Hell. I started picking up a lot of the back catalog in the early '80s, and I mean, I got Heaven and Hell, and then quickly got Mob Rules right afterwards, because I mean the two albums are phenomenal. And yeah, like Tom, you know. I'm a huge Ozzy fan, and I know there's camps out there that are pro purists of Black Sabbath's Ozzy, and then there's the other singers after that, with starting with Dio. But I got to be honest, I love all kind of incarnations of Black Sabbath, and these albums, this album is awesome. I remember getting it for the first time. I love the cover. It blew me away, and I remember picking it up and just, I mean, it's anthemic. I mean, this is a fantastic album. So that's the first time I kind of got into Black Sabbath, was picking up that cassette of Paranoid. As soon as I listened to that, I mean, it blew my mind. So
Well, for me, it's hard. I probably mentioned this on our other Black Sabbath episode where we talked about Paranoid, but I have a hard time remembering when I first heard Sabbath, except for hearing Paranoid on the radio, and maybe Iron Man probably on the radio. But I never really, as far as I can remember, I never really got any Sabbath albums then. But when I was in high school, which would be 1980, whatever, 2, 3, whatever, I remember buying some heavy metal albums off my janitor, and one was Black Sabbath's first album, because I still have that.
Nice.
So, but I can't recall if I've already heard Heaven and Hell, and then I got these albums. I can't recall any of that stuff exactly. But anyway, so I can't recall. But anyway, let's get back. Okay, so this album was produced by Martin Birch, of course, his famous heavy metal producer. And this album reached number 28 on the Billboard Top 200 charts. I'm not sure if that's their top rated album or not. I didn't look that up. And the lineup on this album, of course, is Ronnie James Dio on vocals, Tony Iommi, guitars, Geezer Butler, bass, and Bill Ward drums. And I'm sure there's a keyboardist, but I don't have his name down here. But he's not really a part of the band, I guess. And I checked out that, that setlist FM.fm website about songs played live. And only 6 of these, according to that, only 6 of these songs have been played live.
Yeah.
Which is kind of strange that they left a few. They just recorded them and that's it. Yes, I don't know. So we're going to get the album. And we'll start with, of course, Neon Nights, which is the most played live of this album. And Tom, you start about Neon Nights.
Neon Nights, I believe, was the last track on that album to be recorded. And I remember Ronnie telling a story. They go, "Oh, we got to get one more," because there's only 8 tracks on that album.
Yes.
So what are we going to do? A slow one, fast one? He goes, "We ended up doing a fast one. Good. Now let's go to the bar." That's what he said. So they zapped that out pretty quick, actually. And for me, it's my favorite song on the album. It's also it's certainly within my top 10 favorite songs ever. I love it. Great way to start it out. Lyrically, it's really cool. Called by the toller of the bell. Just right there. I heard that. That was all over. It was great. I didn't care about the rest of the song. It was going to be great. So I think it's a great kickoff to the album. It's not super fast, but it's up tempo and it gets you energized. And boy, this is a shape of things to come for the rest of the album. Sets the tone. It's excellent. I love it.
And Jim?
Yeah, this is a highlight on the album. I'm kind of going to gush about pretty much all the songs on here. So, but this, just like Tom said, this starts it off. And I love the fact that this was the last song written and they kind of just did it. I mean, sometimes the best stuff happens when you don't have time to really think about it. So, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, it was a single released. I love it. And it's been covered so many times. And I mean, I think, Anthrax did a good cover of it on there. I think it was for the Ronnie James Dio tribute, This Is Your Life. And they actually, they do, Anthrax, of course, does a lot of covers in their set list for their tours, and they have this included at it. And they do a pretty good justice for it. But I mean, when you listen to this, you're just ready for this album. It's an awesome first song pick, and it just sets you up for what your ears are going to listen to for the other 7 songs. But yeah, and that's another good point Tom brings up. This only has 8 songs, so like, there's I love albums like this and from this era and before, because there really wasn't any bloat back then. It was all good material. They were putting out and they were doing it. They weren't going with 12 or 15 songs or anything like that. They were just writing it, putting it out, and going for it. And I love that. And I wish more bands would do that nowadays.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I think, excuse me, back then, of course, you had your vinyls. It was only vinyl. Well, you had cassettes too, but you could probably only put that much on one album, right? So now groups have come out with 2 vinyls. And like you say, have 13 or 14 songs on it. And they're not all great songs, of course. So it was a different time back then that you're only going to make 40 minutes or 45 minutes on an album. But this is one of my favorite songs too. Now, I was reading comments, just researching, seeing what I wanted to talk about. And then there's people that say, oh, this isn't Black Sabbath or whatever, because it sounds so different now. Like maybe Tom, since you're a little older.
Yeah.
Would you think that too, in a way that, oh, this isn't Black Sabbath? Because can you imagine Ozzy singing any of these songs?
Absolutely no. They're two completely different bands, just completely separated in my brain.
Yeah.
But you go back, you're talking the musicianship all the way back to the early Sabbath with Geezer and Tony and Bill. They're supreme musicians.
Mhm.
But the voice, the sound of Ozzy's voice and the persona that he had was the main focal point. These guys are still banging out really good musically speaking songs, but they weren't considered that then for some reason, like
Right.
high echelon musicians. It was the notoriety of their wild drug life and the crazy stuff. But now you bring Ronnie into the equation, it's a completely different band. There's
Yeah.
still I think even the focus was on the musicianship and the composition of the songs. And now you're listening to a voice, the greatest voice perhaps in the history of hard rock or even rock, period. Just you looked and listened to it differently. This is a serious band now, and they're going to go somewhere with this. And it was just a weird transitional period again where you didn't know what to expect. And when you first heard it, was like, holy Christ, this is fantastic. This is just great music. So it was just completely different. I consider Black Sabbath than the band Heaven and Hell. Completely two different bands
Yeah.
altogether, just completely. Yeah. This is really cool.
Well, even when they
And I
did the
read
album, sorry, go ahead.
and I read in, I think it was Tommy's book, where when they first started touring for this album, fans were chanting Ozzy, Ozzy,
Yeah.
Ozzy, like, and then, but he said, like, within a gig or two, boom, Dio just won them right over. And I mean, that just goes to show. And to forward more, like what Tom said, 100%, I think that the band was so good right from the start that, and Ozzy's singing, well, is he a great singer? It was the persona and the sound. But Ozzy has always had a great band to really kind of bring any of his shortcomings, kind of cover it a little bit. Because even in the Ozzy solo stuff, I mean, the first two albums, he is Randy Rhoads, the best guitarist of all times. And I mean, that covered up a lot of maybe, made it that much bigger than what it is. And I think that with Black Sabbath, with Butler, Ward, Naomi as well, I think Tom has a great point there. It's the band was huge and musically really, really sound. And then they get a singer who in my mind is really technical and proper, and was able to take it in a different direction. Not to take anything from Ozzy, I love Ozzy, but it's just such a, you're 100% right. I think that's awesome.
Now I forget what I was going to say. That's okay.
Sorry.
Now we'll go on to Children of the Sea, and we'll let Jimmy, you can start talking about Children of the Sea.
This is another one. I mean, this would be probably tied to Neon Nights for me. I love it. It sounds so good live. That guitar intro, it's phenomenal. You've got the kind of the classical acoustic there, and then the heavy guitar just cuts right in. And I mean, the song just kind of takes off, and I really, really like it. I mean, it's awesome. It's and Jag Panzer does a wicked cover of this, and like, I listen to this and then I'll go listen to that cover, and they do it so well. I mean, this whole album pretty much has been covered by somebody because it's so iconic. But no, awesome song. I love it.
And Tom?
Yeah, this one's right up there with Neon Nights. This is probably in my top 10 favorite songs of all time as well. This was the first song that Tony and Ronnie wrote. As a matter of fact, that very night, that Ronnie met Tony at the Rainbow Bar and Grill, they went over to Tony's place that evening, and Tony had been working on the structure of this song, Children of the Sea, and he played a little bit of it for Ronnie, and Ronnie was like, oh, I got to write lyrics. And he wrote lyrics that very night to Children of the Sea. So they already had this written before they were even in the band together. So that, and Ronnie was glowing about, oh, this song is just fantastic. I mean, it was easy for me to put lyrics to this, and we in the public didn't know this was the first song they ever wrote together, but that came out years later. I think even like on a live, the Sabbath live at Radio City Music Hall, Ronnie even says that. This is the first song we wrote together. They don't know, do they, Tony? But it was that night. They weren't a band yet, and they wrote this song. Tony already had it recorded, most of it. and then Ronnie finished it up, and they had a song they loved very much. But it's a great song. I love it. I can't get enough of it. I'll never get sick of it. It's a great song.
Yeah.
And apparently, Tony Iommi says he has a demo of it with Ozzy singing on it, but with
Really?
a different melody and, of course, lyrics.
Yeah. Wow.
But I don't know if I'll ever let that be heard by anyone.
I hope not. Grief.
And I remember it was about the Dio documentary. Have you both seen that?
Yes.
I have. Did I see the whole thing? I can't remember. I
But
think I did.
There's a part, because we were talking about this on the last song, but there was a part in it where, the people that love Ozzy or whatever and didn't want to hear anything without Ozzy, and it shows two druggy people sitting in their house and they put Heaven and Hell album on, and then they were blown away and they were won over by Dio instantly or something. I don't know how true that is, of course.
Yeah, right.
But it looked good anyway. Okay, so now we get to, I like the song too. I don't really need to add anything because Tom said everything I was going to say. So
sorry. Big mouth.
But yeah, about it being the first song they did together. Oh, I do have one thing, I guess, that I found. It says there's been a lot of speculation that this song is about Atlantis, but Dio has only spoke of it as a song about ecological awareness. Now, I don't know how important what the lyrics are, but that's what I read anyway, so doesn't matter. Now we go on to Lady Evil. Now, this song, I guess this song was written about my wife. I don't know how that happened.
Good luck later.
So let's hope my wife doesn't listen to this episode.
She's going to hear about it.
Or we'll have to find out about a song about divorce, a heavy metal song. Is there any heavy metal songs about divorce? Anyway. So it's another great rocker, this song.
Yeah.
And let's see, Tom, what do you think of Lady Evil?
I just love the content of it, the lyrics. There's a place just south of Witches Valley. It's just great. It's just great. Love it. It's just a great song. And one thing, when I heard this album at my friend's house, and maybe because I'm a drum dork or whatever, what stands out to me the very most on this album is the bass drum sound that Martin Birch brought out into this album. Bill, he doesn't play any double bass strokes on this album. It's the sound of it. It's prominent. You can hear it and you can feel it on this album. And I personally love that. And this song brings it out big time too. Just that there's a certain sound, and I don't know if it's how Martin had mic'd up his drums or his bass drums, but it's there in your face, and I love that. And that's the song. That's the sound that stands out to me most about this song. Lyrically, it's great, and it's just like this mystical, really cool setting, and you can get a mental picture sometimes of what this song is. And so it's just another great song. I love every song on this album, so it's going to be the same old for me. Just glowing.
And Jim,
yeah, I mean, Tom says it all there. I think I have in my notes written down. This just highlights the drums, and I mean, and it's hilarious that Tom brought that up. I know he's a drum guy, and he loves that. But yeah, I think really a good focus on Bill Ward here, and I agree. Martin Birch he makes these albums and makes these bands kind of dig deeper, and he really brings out the best. And in that song, definitely, it's got a killer groove to it. I find it really groovy, and it's really cool. I mean, I think it's a little underrated. I think people are more overshadowed by the big song on this album as opposed to some of these other ones. But I mean, like Tom, awesome song, and it's just a groovy, cool song to listen to for sure.
So, what a riff to a guitar player is a groove to a drummer. So
there you go.
That's a great point there, Jim. It has a groove. Bill Ward's groove on this is akin to a riff from a guitar player, and it swings through and it carries through so very well. Good point, my boy.
Nice.
Then we get to the least favorite song, of course. No. No, probably many people's one of their top metal songs of all time, probably the title track, Heaven and Hell. And well, I'll let Tom go and see if he says everything I was going to say.
Yeah, I'll limit my comment.
No,
It's
you
not
don't
my
have to.
it's not my favorite song on the album. It's just got that catchy, that riff. I mean, and what I find interesting from the very beginning of this album, when they would play live, they would take this song and not play it live
Right.
verbatim. They'd add certain layers and other ad libs, if you will,
Yeah.
to it. There's a great white shape looking out at me, or whatever the hell. It's interestingly enough, because this is probably the most noteworthy track on the album, title track, but they added to it live.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah, I mean, it's the anthemic song on the album. And like Tom, my favorite. I think there's way better songs on here. It's a great song. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's just you hear it and you just kind of you just sit there and it kind of gives you goosebumps. But I mean, it's and it's been probably maybe overplayed too quite a bit. I mean, that's just because it is the big song on the album. And that's the thing with this actual album. You've got like you know there's a lot of debate whether Heaven and Hell, which one's better, Heaven and Hell or Mob Rules. And I think Heaven and Hell has higher highs like this, but Mob Rules is more of a consistent, really, really good. And so they kind of trade off with each other. But I think this song's, it's a classic. I mean, and it is probably in most people's, except for Blake's, top 10 songs probably. And I also find it's got it departs a little bit from the Black Sabbath. I mean, this whole album kind of departs from sort of the Black Sabbath more doom sound on the first part of their catalog with Ozzy, and that's just because of Ronnie's voice. But this kind of has a bit of a southern rock sound to it, and kind of gives it. There's a couple coming up that has that as well that I feel, but I like it a lot, and it's really cool. And Dream Theater did a great cover of it, although I mean, the voice sounds so different compared to Ronnie, but still did a really good cover of it as well in 2009.
I like the song. Did you think I didn't like the song? I was joking. I do like this
Oh,
song. This is my favorite. I think this is my favorite Black Sabbath song, actually, of all time.
Nice. Okay.
I think so. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know why I was just joking when I said about whatever. But yeah, I love this song. It's my favorite song on the album. Now I'm just going to read a quote from Ronnie James Dio about this song. It says this was a chance for him to get to say things off his chest that he's always wanted to say. It was a song that let me say the one statement that was most important to me. He's always felt he's been a spokesman for kids, for people that were maybe lonely or looked down upon because they like the wrong kind of music, like us. And more importantly, the kids who play in bands. So I made the statement that I always wanted to make. The world is full of kings and queens who blind your eyes and steal your dreams. It's heaven and hell. And that you all means beware of people who try to blind your eyes with promises. If you have those dreams, don't let anyone rob you of your dreams and just do what you want to do, I guess is what he's saying. I kind of cut that short. And also, I guess in VH1's, I don't know, some documentary they did, Dio stated the song is about the ability of each human being to choose between doing good and doing evil, essentially, that each person has heaven and hell inside themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
So as long as that's all right. Okay, then we got to Wishing Well, which has been played 0 times live, apparently, according to this website. So Jim, what do you think of Wishing Well?
I think this is an underrated one on the album. I like it. It's got wicked riff. The drums sound great in this song. And it kind of, this song, probably more so than all the other songs, has more of an old school Sabbath sound to it for me. And, I couldn't see really Ozzy singing any of these, but if he was, that one would probably be the one that I would think he would probably be kind of able to pull off. So just in my opinion, but I mean, I think it's an underrated song. It should definitely get more love for sure. And I really like it. It would be in my top half of the album.
And Tom? Have we lost Tom? I don't know. I don't hear Tom.
Am I here now?
Oh, there,
Yeah.
I hear you.
I think I accidentally hit my mute button on my headset.
Well, okay.
My
Okay.
apologies.
Wishing well. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I agree. And that's a interesting point because it really didn't ever occur to me about, yeah, this is a song that Oz could probably sing, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a really good point. I never pondered that. Um, on the actual album, the vinyl album, this was the first song on side 2.
Ah.
And I thought it
Yes.
was a really cool way to kick off, the flip side. So it was, again, a little more up tempo, kind of the same approach. To start off that side of the album with a up tempo, you know, driving song. So yeah, I like the song. I thought that's what I remember the most about it. It was just on the first song on side B or 2 of the album.
Nice.
Well, Jim, you kind of meant, like you say, it's underrated. And I think there's a few songs on here that are underrated just because of the really awesome songs. So it's hard to, people are going to bypass it and say, oh, I want to listen to Heaven and Hell or Lonely as a Word or whatever your favorite songs are, Die Young or whatever. So, yeah, so there's a couple songs on here like that one that they're still great songs, but yeah, they are overlooked because of all the other ones. And I guess you don't play it live. That doesn't help either.
Yeah. But it certainly has its spot on this album, though.
Yes.
Totally.
And then we get to Die Young. And Jimmy, you can talk about Die Young.
I mean, this is one of my favorites on this album. I mean, I remember seeing the video for it when it was released back in the day.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. We were like, I think that was the first time I probably, besides like off of Holy Diver, and that got to see some footage from Dio and Sabbath. And I mean, this was I think the third single released off this. And the interesting thing is, I don't even think Heaven and Hell was ever released as a single.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so this is pretty cool. And I mean, that ominous guitar start to it is so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, the guitar is unbelievable and the song just takes off. I love it. And it's so many change ups in the song. It just goes in different directions. I love it. And this, it's just such a cool song. I mean, I'm saying this about every song, but this one, and it's got a perfect spot. Like, Tom said, Wishing Well started side B or side 2, the second side, and then you hit into this monster, like the second song on side 2. So it's perfectly set up for you. Just the side 2 is just as good as side 1, and I mean, this just proves it.
And Tom?
Yeah, the intro to this song is really cool. That unusual sounding haunting guitar, slowly building into the beginning of the song itself. This is my best friend's favorite song on the album.
Cool.
He's always Die Young, Die Young, Die Young. And when Jim mentioned the video, I think of the video in that midsection of the song where da 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 da, and Bill Ward is going mental on his hi-hat. And Bill usually wasn't that animated physically as a drummer, but who knows if he was all drugged up at the time, perhaps, but or loaded. But I remember that video. It's a really cool video. And at the end of the video, very end of it, all of a sudden you hear audio of like an audience applauding and cheering, and the guys come out. And did you see this part of it, Jim, where all 4 guys come out at the front of the stage and they kind of like shake hands with the people? That was kind of interesting. I thought
it was
about the video itself. But another strong song. I really like it, and just has its certain place on that album as well. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I've never like maybe it's the fastest one on the album. I guess it's more what you'd expect Dio to do on his own after whatever. But yeah, for me, because again, I probably heard Dio's solo album before I even went to the Black Sabbath albums. Again, it's hard to remember. But so this is definitely my kind of Sabbath more than the Ozzy Sabbath. I wasn't really a big, looking back on it now, like we talked in the Paranoid, not a big Ozzy fan, except for the great musicians that are always behind him, like Jim mentioned before. That saves any faults he might have had. But yeah, this is definitely more my kind of music than the doomy Sabbath stuff, I guess. Yeah. And that one has been played 250 times live, so that's a pretty good one for the band, I guess. And then we got another one that they've never played live, apparently, called Walk Away. And first, I was reading, I don't know, song meanings don't mean that much to me, but some people like to care about what they think. So one person said you're walking away from drugs, but then most of the people were saying it's walking away from a woman.
Same thing.
I don't know if that's true. And then somebody said, I hate when Ronnie James Dio sings about women. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, Tom, what do you think of the song Walk Away?
I like it. It's weird. I compare these last two tracks on this album. I compare with the last two tracks on AC/DC's Highway to Hell.
Yeah.
I put these two together somehow as part A and part B to capping off my favorite album in the history of the world, of course. But I always think of these two tracks together, and I think they fit very well together because they're mid-tempo to slower tempo, kind of different than the album, but they're memorable. Oh, walk away, she's looking to love you. I mean, it comes to my mind immediately. So I think these last two tracks are very strong tracks, and I have no problem with them closing out the album. But I think of them as like a package deal, like two songs combined. I don't know how or why, but I just do. But yeah, really like this song too.
And Jim?
Yeah, like Walk Away. Again, I'm going to use the word underrated but you're right. Like, I mean, there's so many massive songs on this that something has to take sort of the back end of the album. But I mean, I agree with Tom. I've never thought of it that way with the last two songs, but I can see how they definitely kind of go hand in hand. And I mean, Walk Away, I think this is like some of Dio's best vocal performances on this song. He is just ripping it, and the flow is great. I love it. I mean, I love it. And the drums again, Tom. I mean, the drums in this song are phenomenal. And again, I think the production on this album is what really just, I mean, you went from, their last album to this. I mean, two totally different singers, two totally different kind of directions, but just really, really, they brought out the best. And Ronnie brought his voice, but I mean, I think the musicianship of this and in this song as well really highlights that.
Yeah, very good stuff.
Yeah.
And then we finish with Lonely is the Word. And we'll let Jim start first.
Now I'm going to listen to these together all the time. And he's right. I'm thinking about it. And then I just went back to just checked out AC/DC, and he's right. Those two do go together.
They do, man.
Yeah, they do. So, I mean, this one here is kind of, Lonely is the Word is a more kind of like Wishing Well a little bit, in the sense that it has kind of a little bit of a return to a bit of a doom sound for me, and a bit of an old school sound. But it's probably because it's got such a bluesy kind of riff and feel to it. And again, another underrated song. I think the second half of this album is just as strong as the first half, and it just finishes it on a high for me.
Yeah.
And Tom, you briefly mentioned it already, but want to talk more about the song?
It's like the song exudes like a melancholy kind of a vibe and feel, like Jim said, like the more doomier stuff, but it isn't like so thick and plodding and heavy.
Yeah.
But you just have a feel of melancholy, like, oh, lonely as orange, geez. But yeah, so it's a good capper of the album. And again, I just consider these two songs to be together as twins for some reason. I don't know. But yeah, I like this song.
Now, I was reading, again, research and stuff, trying to talk about different things. And then I seen some comments. I'm going to ask you about this because it said that they rip off Led Zeppelin in this song. Do either of you guys know what that might be talking about at all?
I don't, but I'm not a Led Zeppelin fan, so I'm not overly familiar with their catalog. And it's
because they didn't really say what song.
Yeah.
And I was just because for me, because heaven, going back to Heaven and Hell, the ending, it does kind of remind me of Stairway to Heaven, how they pick up really fast at the end. But of course, Stairway to Heaven is slow all the way through at the start, where Heaven and Hell, it might be slow, but it's still heavy. So, but I was listening to the song before, but then I must have got distracted by my dog and I didn't finish to the end. Lonely is a word. So I thought, crap, I don't remember. I mean, even though I've heard the song many times, and I never ever thought of, I like Led Zeppelin and I know their catalog, and I don't remember anything about Lonely as a Word being something about Led Zeppelin.
I never heard that.
So I was just wondering if you guys
No.
would know what these people were talking about.
Can't say I do.
Okay.
No.
So anyway, that's the album. So now we're going to rate it. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be some 10s in here. So I'm going to start, and I'm giving it a 9.5. And Tom, are you giving it a 10 probably?
No, I've never given any album
okay.
a 10 because there's no such thing to me as perfect. But I'll go a 9.5.
Oh.
If there were 10s, I would give it a 10, but I just don't give 10s to anybody. So I work on a 9 scale.
Well, I know Jim gives 10s, so
yeah. I mean, I'm the guy who gives everything a good rating. So no, I mean, this for me is a 10 out of 10. I mean, for me, it's. But I got to be honest, I don't know. I kind of go back to which one's better, Mob Rules or this. And I'd love to hear, like, what do you guys think of those two albums? Like, do you think, you know, what do you think?
I do have thoughts on that, actually. I think I look at it a couple different ways. One, I favor Heaven and Hell, but that is because of sentimental value to it, because it was, for me, it was more of a reintroduction to Sabbath. So it was more important of a record to me personally. In many cases, Heaven and Hell was the introduction to people of Black Sabbath who didn't really even know anything about the Ozzy period. I believe for me, if I were just to be completely, well, I am honest, but to be honest, I think Mob Rules is the better quality album.
Right.
All the way through. And I think because it's consistently higher, but I like Heaven and Hell more. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's because I think it was, being around back then, it was a humongous deal to have somebody different singing for Black Sabbath and the way that they, the great album they put out. So that's the way I feel about it. I think Mob Rules is maybe a little bit better.
Yeah.
It might be. But to me, this is my preference. Although I love Mob Rules as well. So yeah.
Well, for me, it's been a while since I listened to Mob Rules. I wanted to listen to it again because I thought this question might come up. But of course, I didn't get around to it. But just going back, looking at the song, but I still think I like this album, Heaven and Hell, better than the Mob Rules. I think Mob Rules is a little slower, like in some of the songs, Sign of Southern Cross. And Country Girl or whatever, they're a little slower, but Turn Up the Night is like another one of my most favorite songs by Sabbath. And that's
I got something about Turn Up the Night. So back in 1981 or whatever, I heard Vinny Appice in the States here was doing a national radio interview, and he hadn't heard Turn Up the Night yet. This is right when Mob Rules came out, and if you remember, there's 4 strokes on the hi-hat, and then they go into the song. And Vinny goes, "What the hell is that? That wasn't supposed to be on the song." Just, it's like the timing mechanism. So that tells me that they very well could have played that song live in the studio. And that was part of it. That's, you start the band up. Sometimes a drummer will hit their sticks together or hit the hi-hat, the four strokes on the hi-hat. And he was like, "What is that doing? I didn't think that was supposed to be actually on the album." So there.
Wicked.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll talk about seeing them live. Now, this is just going to be a one-person chat mostly, I guess. But I've seen Dio by himself a couple times, and I saw Heaven and Hell once, I believe. But I don't really have any interesting stories from that. And Jim, you haven't seen Black Sabbath live before, right?
No, Black Sabbath or Dio. So I'm mute on this one.
So I know that Tom started a riot at a show. So we're gonna let Tom talk about that.
Yeah. So I've seen both tours. I've seen the Heaven and Hell tour and the Mob Rules tour together, not together, obviously, just year after year.
Yes.
So the Black Sabbath Heaven and Hell tour um, took place in Milwaukee on October 9th of 1980. I was um, I was a junior in high school, so I was 17. Um, and I went to this show. So it was a package tour. It was Blue Oyster Cult was the opener.
Nice.
Cult was touring on Cultosaurus erectus.
Ah,
So they opened, and it was dubbed the Black and Blue Tour. So they did a whole national tour. Milwaukee was their stop, and we had a little. It was a riot that occurred. The kind of what happened was, unusually, I remember back in those days, the waiting period in between bands was longer back in those days than it is these days. It was not uncommon for a good full hour to go by before the headlining band would come on. It's just the way it was. And I remember people were getting a little antsy about this. Come on, what the hell? First of all, it was a Thursday night. So for me, it was a school night, and I had to travel about an hour and a half south to get to the show. And I'm thinking, Jesus. But, it's what you did back then. No big deal. But it was quite late before Sabbath even took the stage. I'm talking like damn near 9:30 at night before they even started. And for us, where we were, that's getting late. But anyway, so they opened that tour with War Pigs, and they transitioned into Neon Nights. There was no chatter in between those two songs. Ronnie didn't address the crowd. The third song, they didn't make it through. It was NIB, not dissimilar to the Live Evil album, where Ronnie would go Geezer Butler. So I remember Ronnie did a brief introduction to Geezer, and he goes, "We're going to play a song, Geezer Butler." And then that opening bass, doo 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 doo, that was supposed to come on. I think maybe we heard a little bit of that, but all of a sudden the music stopped. At this point, though, the intro to this is dark in the arena. The idea was darkness. Geezer does the bass intro, and when the rest of the band comes in, the lights come back on. That never happened. What happened was, we didn't know what happened, but some goof threw a bottle and it hit Geezer in the head.
ooh.
And he went down, and Geezer will tell you that he at least was briefly knocked out, I guess. But he was down, and he cut his head open, and we didn't know this. So there's a lot of confusion. We just thought, plus I was early in my concert going days. I didn't know really, is this a thing that happens at concerts? Are they just playing around or what? We didn't know. So, but the lights did come up. And when the lights came up, there was no band on the stage. We're like, what's going on? And then I just recall a lot of confusion because there was no announcement, no formal announcement of what happened, because it was all chaotic. But what did happen was, I don't know if it was the production manager, the stage manager, the band's manager. This guy comes out and he's mad. And we couldn't really, actually, Ronnie said something before they left the stage. I couldn't really make out what he said. I think later to find out, it was like, what the hell are you guys doing? We give our blood, not literally though, or something along those lines. But Ronnie did say something, but I could not understand what he said. But this Sabbath crew guy comes out, and he was a manager. He said who he was, I think, but we didn't know. And he's a British guy, and he goes, now mind you, this is 1980. This is only 4 years after the country's bicentennial, or a birthday, right? 1770 or 1976 is 1980, so we're all patriotic yet back in those days. Well, he said something about this isn't 1776 anymore. in essence, ripping on us Americans. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? That did not sit well with anybody. I remember that. And that caused a lot of bad juju and a lot of bad feelings. And then he went on for a couple minutes and then he stopped. And then the realization came that they ain't coming back.
Yeah.
But and I remember, dude, I mean, there were fires set. It was in the Milwaukee arena, so it's a 12,000 seat arena, right? The the floor had like portable sets of chairs, like rows of chairs that you could sit in, a portion of that. But because the Milwaukee Bucks basketball team played at this arena, so the seats were similar to like a seat in a movie theater. You know, the seat that just the part that you sit on, they fold up. Well, somehow, some way, those were getting torn off of the actual chair part itself, and they're throwing them down onto the floor. I was down on the floor, and people were freaking out because it just, you know, fires were set, and, you know, it was just ripping the place apart, and it spilled out into the streets of Milwaukee, and I think 160 people were arrested. Cops showed up in riot gear. And I just remember people like concert goers, you know, they might have been in an altered state, you know, because Sabbath was known to be a big drug band, you know. Just guys getting dragged across the street by cops in riot gear, taking them into the paddy wagon and getting them downtown. Because this took place right downtown Milwaukee. So storefronts, you know, windows were bashed, you know, all this bad stuff that happened outside the arena, you know, a lot of damage and stuff. But yeah, we didn't get 3 songs deep until somebody, you know, threw a bottle. And Geezer actually said later, you know, hey, this isn't the worst thing that happened to me, believe it or not, in my music career. He goes, for one thing, unless the guy had like, he was super accurate with a bottle, I don't think he was trying to hit me because the lights were down when I got hit. He couldn't see me. So we don't know. We were wondering once the truth came out, and I hung around later. We're like, we got to find that guy and kick his ass. Find him, right? We're going to beat the hell out of this son of a gun. And that never happened. To this day, I don't think I've ever heard anybody even say like, yeah, we found out who it was, or somebody did. I don't think so. Yeah, because the arena was dark. It was completely dark.
It would be, unless the person's going to admit that he did it.
Yeah. We'd still beat him up.
Yeah, it'd be hard to see.
So yeah, it was the Black and Blue tour was quite aptly titled for that. Yeah, so unfortunately, I only saw 2 songs. You know, it was a
now. So the next, you saw the next tour, was that at the same place, or was that?
No, it wasn't. Oh, and another thing. So what happened was hard rock and metal bands were banned from playing at the arena there, and then beer sales were banned, but that shortly ended. Sabbath, I forgot about that. Yeah, but no, I saw them in Milwaukee for the Heaven and Hell tour. The next tour was in Green Bay because I lived closer to Green Bay, Wisconsin. So Sabbath did not play in Milwaukee on the Mob Rules tour, oddly enough. And so that was a little bit of a tweak, and I understand that. That's, you know, but those bad feelings, they dissipated. Those went away later in their careers. And Ronnie played in Milwaukee a bunch of times, and Sabbath with Tony Martin, they played in, you know, Geezer played in Milwaukee after that. So it was just, they realized it was one asshole who did this, you know, it wasn't us as a whole. But yeah, the Mob Rules tour was fantastic. I mean, it was just, now they're really on, you know, they're cruising at this point, and that was just a fantastic tour. It was just as good as you think it was. It was. Wow. Trust me, it was fantastic. It was really cool. I remember the staging. There's a lot of like up in the rigging area, like stained glass, like looking windows and shit. It was really cool. Fantastic. Cool. Yeah. So that's my live stories about that lineup. Oh, and by the way, the Heaven and Hell tour, it was Vinny playing drums, not Bill. Bill had already got kicked off the tour. He quit.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. So the show in Milwaukee was probably only like show number. I couldn't imagine Vinny had 10 shows under his belt yet with him. So Yeah, so Vinny actually was the drummer at that riot. Yeah, he was there. It was him.
Jeez.
So if any, I know you complain that not many bands play Milwaukee. Well, now we know why. There's
no.
such a rough
Bunch of
house
frickin'
people there.
hoodlums. Yeah, you take your very life in your own hands just going downtown now.
Okay, anyway, so now we're going to we all did our top 10 albums of 1980. And I think I'm going to go first this time. Usually I think I go last, but I'm going to start first this time because I'm interested to see what you guys have and if you match. Yeah. I'm sure we have some matches. It's 1980. There's not that many heavy metal albums. And of course, you can have hard rock in here too.
Sure.
You know what you did. So I started, my number 10 was Crocus with Metal Rendezvous. With their great song, now I forget the name of the song, but it sounds just like AC/DC. Long Stick Goes Boom. That's it. That's on that one.
Yeah. That's not on Metal Rendezvous.
Oh, it isn't it? Oh, sorry, I have the wrong album then. I didn't research that. I just.
I don't want to be you can edit that out.
That's okay. I can make a mistake. Because
that's in my top 10 too.
I make a mistake once in a while.
Sorry. Okay. No.
Sorry, but anyway, so I got Crocus there. Number 9, I got Saxon with Wheels of Steel. I know that you guys are probably Saxon fans, or I know Jim is anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
Number 8, I got Ted Nugent's Scream Dream.
Nice.
I always loved Wango Tango.
I saw that tour too.
Oh, I saw Ted Nugent, but it was way later in his career. Well, it's probably been 15 years ago. He's still playing, but whatever. Yep. And let's see, number 7, I got Judas Priest with British Steel. Number 6, I got Van Halen with Women and Children First, which is probably my favorite Van Halen album. Well, maybe the first one, but in that one. Yeah, number 5, we got a lot of legends here at the top here. Number 5, I got Motorhead with Ace of Spades. Mm-hmm. Number 4, I got Saxon again, since they had 2 albums out that year with Strong Arm of the Law.
Nice.
Number 3, I have this album, Heaven and Hell. Is my number 3 album, even though I gave it a 9.5, which and number 2, I got Iron Maiden's debut album as my number 2. And funny, my number 1 album is Ozzy's Blizzard of Oz. Yeah, but like Jim kind of mentioned before, the reason it's my number 1 is because of Randy Rhoads. Is really the rest of the band, the music and stuff over just being Ozzy. It's just that Randy Rhoads is amazing. So that's my number 1. Good and list. We'll let Jim do his 10 next.
Right. So I had trouble doing this because I had so many. So I was going to start with 3 honorable mentions. So I got to go with my honorable mentions will be Thin Lizzy with Chinatown, Accept, I'm a Rebel, and Motorhead, Ace of Spades. I had to throw Motorhead in there, and they kept moving down my list. So at number 10, I got to go with Tigers of Pantang, Wildcat. Wicked debut album.
Yeah,
Wicked. I love it. I love it. Number 9, you know I'm a big Scorpions fan, so Animal Magnetism for this year is great. Not necessarily probably in my top 4 Scorpion albums, but I love these this would be 1980. I love 1980 back Scorpions. I think are just phenomenal. So, and this is one of the last, I love the 80s Scorpions too, but this one was definitely a great one. Number 8, I go with Lightning to the Nations by Diamond Head. The new wave of British heavy metal bands are full on this, and that's just one of my favorites. The remastered version I picked up in January is phenomenal. Number 7, huge Saxon fan, Strong Arm of the Law. This could have even been higher. Number 6, one of my favorite bands, and, Tom has talked about it already, Cultosaurus Erectus, Blue Oyster Cult. What a fantastic album. Yeah. I love Blue Oyster Cult, and that's one of my favorites. So that's
Martin Birch produced that record also.
Yes, he did. It's awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Number 5, Wheels of Steel, Saxon. I love it when bands back in the early 80s and 70s would bring out 2 releases in the run of a year. What a treat. Now we get one every so many years, but that's just great. Number 4, Priest, British Steel. Number 3, Blizzard of Oz, Ozzy. And, again, Randy Rhoads. This could easily be anywhere from 1, 2, or 3. But, Iron Maiden, my number 2, the debut. That album is just awesome. I love that album. and it's just so good, so good. And then my number one for this year is, and it could have been Iron Maiden, but I went with Heaven and Hell, Black Sabbath. I mean, you can't go wrong with any one of those two in the top one. So that's my group.
Nice.
Okay, and Tom, you get to finish it off.
Yeah, so we do have some common threads here. My number 10 is Scorps, Animal Magnetism. I did see that tour, and as I mentioned just right before, it was part of Ted Nugent's tour. Ted Nugent was a headliner, Scorpions was second, and the opener, Def Leppard, touring off of On Through the Night. Three freaking bands. That's a hard combo or triple threat to beat. But that, just as a side note, I saw that tour shortly thereafter. Anyway, my number 9, Triumph, Progressions of Power.
Wicked album.
It's my favorite Triumph album. 8 is Crocus, Blake. It's Metal Rendezvous. It is a fantastic album, and your album is fantastic as well. But you may remember Metal Rendezvous is just, it's excellent. Song after song after song. And I apologize about that too. I didn't mean to.
That's okay.
I don't. 7, here's one that we have not heard from yet today. Michael Schenker Group's first album.
Yeah, that's right. Damn it.
It's one of my favorite. And actually, from this album on the way upward, these 7 that I'm going to list are my favorite top 10 of all time. So this is a year that I love. 6, Ace of Spades, Motorhead. I did see that tour. I saw the Ace of Spades tour. Maiden's first one is coming in at number 5 for me. And I saw Iron Maiden at Summerfest, but it was 81. Paul Di'Anno stand. That was very cool. 4 is British Steel by Priest. 3, as popular as it is, it's still just a great record. Back in Black from AC/DC.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Wheels of Steel from Saxon. Saxon has always been in my top 3 favorite bands of all time. And number 1, the album of the day here, Heaven and Hell, Sabbath. Just, I don't leave home without it. Every time I leave in my car, that son of a gun is with me, because I just might just feel like listening to it for the 500 millionth time.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
Well, I already knew that was going to be your number 1. So
yeah, I know. I can't stand it.
Oh, and just for my mistake, yes, it's Crocus album, One Vice at a Time, that has Long Stick Goes Boom.
Yeah,
I had the wrong.
It's okay
album.
though. Good, they were all really, those first 3 and those first 4. It was like bang, 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 right away.
Headhunter. Actually, I guess I can say this because it won't make the list, but Headhunter is on my top 50 list. Actually,
I think it's on mine too. I think.
Could be. I'd have to go back and look. Yes, it's a great album. Anyway, so that was a good show. Anybody have anything to add about this?
Well, no, it's just a pleasure to be with you guys, and it's fun, and I think a lot of good points came up today.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. It's great, Tom and Blake. You guys letting me hang around. No, this was a lot of fun. And one of the best albums. So I mean, it was like a double treat for me. So
for sure. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you guys for joining me. And as I mentioned earlier in the episode, the next episode will be our 1st of October, and it will be the Halloween themed episode where our writer Stacia and one of her friends did a Bathory album called Under the Sign of the Black Mark. So that'll be the next episode, and I think that's the first black metal album we've had on here, because I don't call Venom black metal, even though we did do Venom's black metal album, but they're not really black metal. And I'm sure Tom hasn't heard this Bathory album before, have you?
No.
I haven't either. I don't know, Jim, have you heard it?
No.
Okay.
But I'm looking forward to it.
So we're going to have to listen to that so we can find out about Bathory.
Right. There you go.
Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Take care, everybody.